Music, unsettling low hum, building to a dramatic thrum. Visuals, rain splattering against a dark window. A flickering street lamp. One moment Sarah was there, vibrant, 28, planning her future. The next, an empty house. A cold cup of tea. A profound silence. A void where life had been. Visuals, quick cuts of yellow police tape. Flashing sirens. A detective silhouetted against a searchlight. Police arrived. No struggle. No forced entry. And that's when investigators noticed something strange. Just an unsettling absence. Detective Miller, a veteran, remembered it. She'd simply evaporated, he'd later recount. Bewilderment etched on his face. Rips at your gut. There's asterisk nothing, no body. No witness. Days bled into weeks. Weeks into months. No stray shoe. Not a footprint. The truth was hiding in plain sight. Sarah Jenkins was gone, swallowed by the unforgiving night. Havenwood held its breath, then exhaled in despair. Theories bloomed: a drifter, a secret lover, an abduction gone wrong. Every lead turned dead. Every tip dissolved. The case went cold. Files thick with frustration gathered dust. An unsolvable riddle, the local newspaper declared, echoing community sentiment. Years passed. 2 decades. Sarah Jenkins became a whisper. And that's when investigators noticed something strange. Everyone believed this mystery would remain cold. Music swells slightly, then a sharp, sudden cut to a single, haunting, unresolved note. But what if everyone was wrong? What if answers weren't hidden in shadows, but far closer? What if the monster wasn't a stranger, but someone who walked among them? A master of deception whose secret was so meticulously guarded, so woven into everyday life, that nobody knew. Sound of gentle, melancholic piano music begins, overlaid with soft, distant sounds of an ordinary neighborhood, birds chirping, children laughing faintly, a car passing. Sarah Jenkins knew secrets. Not dark, thrilling ones, but the quiet, comforting kind. She knew the exact moment the morning sun would hit her kitchen window, bathing the worn countertop in a golden glow, perfect for her first cup of tea. She knew the particular rhythm of her old golden retriever, Barnaby, thumping his tail against the floorboards when she poured his breakfast kibble. She knew the way her neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, always left a freshly baked loaf of sourdough on her porch on Thursdays, an unspoken gesture of friendship. Sarah, a librarian with an infectious laugh and a fondness for oversized sweaters, was the kind of person who collected these small, tender truths. The truth was hiding in plain sight. Her life wasn't extraordinary, but it was full. Full of books, full of quiet joy, full of a predictable comfort that felt to her like a kind of magic. She lived in Willow Creek, a town where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. She had plans for that autumn. A trip to the coast, a new garden patch, maybe finally getting around to framing those old family photos. A future bright and clear stretched before her. Then one Tuesday, the sun still hit the kitchen window, but Sarah wasn't there. Barnaby's kibble sat untouched. Henderson's sourdough went uncollected. The silence that descended wasn't quiet, it was deafening. Her absence screamed. Panic, a cold, hard knot, tightened its grip on Willow Creek. The truth was hiding in plain sight. The small town, once a haven of predictability, was shattered. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of blue lights and hushed urgency. Detectives, grim-faced and methodical, swarmed Sarah's tidy home. Every creak of the floorboards, every open drawer, felt like an intrusion on her carefully cultivated peace. Friends and family, their faces etched with disbelief, offered what little they knew. She had been at work. She had walked home. She had been. The initial investigation was a flurry of activity, fueled by hope and desperation. Local police, overwhelmed, called in state resources. Patrol cars crisscrossed the leafy streets. Doors were knocked on, questions asked, alibis scrutinized. Every local eccentric, every delivery driver, every fleeting visitor to Willow Creek was considered. Leads, like sparks from a fire, flew in every direction. A suspicious car spotted near the library, a vague argument overheard at the local diner, a disgruntled patron Sarah had gently rebuffed. The next discovery changed everything. Each was chased down with fervent energy, only to dissipate into nothing. Dead ends piled up like autumn leaves. Each false hope chipped away at the town's fragile sense of security. His shop supplied the lumber for new fences, the paint for fresh homes, the seeds for blossoming gardens. Mark was the epitome of a trusted community member. He offered condolences to Sarah's grieving family, a steadying hand on a trembling shoulder. He spoke with the police, calm and cooperative, recounting his Tuesday afternoon, a shipment arrival, a leaky faucet repair for Mrs. Henderson, dinner at home with his wife. His alibi was ironclad, witnessed, unremarkable. He seemed genuinely concerned, a pillar of strength in a collapsing world. He even organized a search party, his voice resonating with empathy as he spoke of Sarah, such a sweet, gentle soul. No one, not a single person in Willow Creek, saw anything amiss. How could they? Mark Thorne was a neighbor, a friend. Years later, a phone call would reveal. He was good. He walked among them, a seemingly ordinary man navigating an extraordinary tragedy. But beneath that veneer of normalcy, a meticulous architect was at work, constructing a life built on a hidden foundation of carefully laid lies. A life that, for decades, ensured nobody knew the true monster residing in their midst. The police moved on, pursuing other avenues, convinced Mark Thorne was just another grieving resident. A single cold visual, a discarded missing persons flyer, rain-streaked, slowly peeling off a lamppost. 2 decades crawled by. 20 years. Enough time for memories to blur, for witnesses to move on, for hope to wither into a brittle husk. Evelyn Reed's disappearance became a ghost story whispered in the town, a chilling local legend. The file, thick with dead ends and unanswered questions, gathered dust in the cold case archives, a monument to an unyielding mystery. But some ghosts refuse to stay buried, and some secrets are simply biding their time. In the quiet hum of the cold case unit, Detective Sarah Finch found it. A new face, a fresh perspective, drawn to the unsolved, the seemingly impossible. Years later, a phone call would reveal. She approached Evelyn's case not as a legend, but as a puzzle waiting for the right key. Months she spent, poring over every page, every grainy photograph, every meticulously typed interview transcript from 1998. The sheer volume was overwhelming. Each detail, a potential clue or another deliberate misdirection. She felt the weight of past failures, the raw frustration echoing through the yellowed reports. The initial investigation had been swift, broad, and ultimately blind. Then she stopped. Not just generic earth, but a peculiar composition, flecked with fragments of concrete and fine, crystalline sand. The initial investigators, overwhelmed by the chaos and urgency of a fresh crime, had noted it, then dismissed it. Construction site runoff, the margin comment read. likely tracked in by first responders or the victim herself. It made sense then. It fit the immediate narrative, the desperate search for a random perpetrator. But something in Sarah's gut tightened, a quiet insistence that this neat explanation felt wrong. The next discovery changed everything. It was alien, an anomaly, a tiny, almost invisible speck of incongruity in a vast, overwhelming narrative of confusion. But for Sarah, it felt like a jarring chord in a silent room, a deliberate wrong note. She cross-referenced the soil report with Evelyn's last known movements, the terrain around her home, the path she usually took. Sarah pulled out the faded crime scene photos again. The soil was indeed subtle, clinging to the edge of a discarded item, barely visible. It suggested a different origin, a secondary location. A place Evelyn had been or been taken that wasn't her home and wasn't the supposed point of abduction. A place tied to this unique signature. It hinted at a deliberate act, a planned disposal, not a random street encounter. The next discovery changed everything. The more she dug, the more unsettling the detail became. It was a faint whisper, easily missed amidst the shouts of more dramatic evidence. But whispers sometimes carry the loudest truths. This wasn't just a misstep by early investigators. It was a fundamental misreading of the scene. If the soil wasn't from a nearby construction site, then where was it from? And if it wasn't tracked by Evelyn or responders, then who brought it there? The seemingly insignificant detail began to unravel the very foundation of the cold case theory, suggesting that the monster wasn't a phantom, but someone with a very deliberate, very specific footprint. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing and where they had been. What else had been dismissed? Not first responders. This distinct pattern, almost unique, sent them back to the original crime scene photos. Years of dust digitally wiped away, revealing a faint, almost invisible impression. And that's when investigators noticed something strange. Then another, near the back door. More deliberate. A phantom presence. Harding pushed. Every surface again. Anything that could have been touched. Old evidence boxes, undisturbed for decades, were meticulously reopened. Dusty bags yielded their secrets. A discarded coffee cup, found days after the murder in a nearby alley, initially dismissed as unrelated detritus. Now bathed in new light, subjected to advanced chemical processing. A partial print emerged, blurred by time but undeniably there. Enough to feed into the modern AFIS database. Days bled into weeks. The system churned. The truth was hiding in plain sight. An old arrest for petty theft, decades prior in another state. Arthur Finch. A name that meant nothing to the original investigation. A specter from the forgotten past. No digital footprint existed for Arthur in 1988. No cell phone records. But a man doesn't simply materialize. The reinvestigation team, armed with Finch's name, began charting his life around the time of Sarah Jenkins' death. Every public record, every property transaction, every utility bill. A painstaking timeline began to form. They uncovered an old landline record, a number from the local community center where Sarah had volunteered. And then a small, anonymous donation logged in the center's ledger. Dated weeks before Sarah vanished. The faded handwriting, now digitally enhanced, matched Finch's known signature from his old arrest report. And that's when investigators noticed something strange. A thread so slender it was almost invisible. A quiet boy. Came to help sometimes. Always polite. never caused trouble. But then a flicker in her gaze. He had these eyes, she whispered, like he was always watching. Calculating, she thought nothing of it then. Just a shy kid. The team fanned out. Years later, a phone call would reveal. Old neighbors. A bit of a loner, one said, shrugging. But decent enough. Another, a retired foreman, offered a chilling detail. He was meticulous. Everything had its place. Never a hair out of place, even on a dusty job site. These weren't red flags in the moment. Now they screamed. They painted a picture of a man who curated his existence, who meticulously buried his true self. The net was tightening. The coffee cup print. The anonymous donation. The distant family link. Years later, a phone call would reveal the carefully constructed life of a man who seemed to exist without truly living. Each piece, a painstaking excavation, pulling Arthur Finch from the shadows of anonymity. He hadn't vanished after the crime. He had simply melted back into the background, watching. Nobody knew. Not until now. The deeper they dug, the more terrifying the proximity became. The cold case team, weary but resolute, laid out the pieces. Not just fragments anymore, but a mosaic of damning evidence. The faint latent print, reanalyzed with new technology, wasn't just a match to Arthur Finch. It placed his right index finger on the very edge of Sarah Jenkins's bedroom window frame. Not inside, not outside, but where someone would have braced themselves, prying. The fibers found clinging to her nightgown, previously dismissed as environmental contamination, now perfectly matched the specific blend of a carpet found in an abandoned storage unit, rented years ago under a false name, but with a credit card linked to a burner phone Arthur Finch had also used. But what they didn't know was. Then came the digital forensics. A painstaking sift through archived social media, old family photo albums, and forgotten forums. It wasn't a stranger they were looking for anymore. It was someone intricately woven into the fabric of her life, yet invisible. Detective Miller stared at a faded photograph. Sarah radiant at her high school graduation. In the background, blurry but unmistakable, stood Arthur Finch. A ghost at the feast. Always there watching. The detective slid a printed photograph across the table. It wasn't the window print, nor the fiber analysis. It was a picture of a little girl, no older than 5, clutching a teddy bear. The next discovery changed everything. And beside her, a younger Arthur, maybe 8, holding her hand, both smiling shyly for the camera. Finch's composure shattered. His eyes, usually dead and flat, flickered with a terror they hadn't seen before. Where did you get that?" His voice, a whisper, was laced with an unexpected tremor. The carefully constructed facade, years in the making, began to crack. Finch, Detective Miller's voice was a low hum of triumph, is from the Jenkins's family album. Sarah's 4th birthday party. And you, Arthur, were there. Not as a distant relative, not as a casual acquaintance. You were her half-brother. Your mother's secret, one her father had taken to his grave. A gasp. Not from Finch, but from the unseen camera operator, the forensic tech listening in the next room. The next discovery changed everything. He hadn't just known her. He had grown up alongside her, an unacknowledged shadow. The weight of the reveal crushed the silence. Finch slumped, the fight gone. The detective pressed on. You were there at her father's funeral, weren't you, Arthur? Offering condolences to her mother. Consoling Sarah. You were practically family. You walked among them. And nobody knew. The betrayal hit Sarah's surviving family like a physical blow. Her mother, Eileen Jenkins, gasped, a strangled cry escaping her lips when the news was delivered. The man who had sat at their dinner table, who had helped move furniture, who had even sent flowers after Sarah's death, was the monster. The proximity wasn't just terrifying. It was an act of insidious, calculated malice, played out for decades right under their noses. The evidence mounted, old letters detailing the affair, a birth certificate hidden in an antique box, even childhood drawings signed by AJ alongside SJ. They weren't just proving Arthur Finch was the killer. Years later, a phone call would reveal. They were exposing a lie that had festered for generations, culminating in unimaginable horror. The monster wasn't a stranger. He was family. He was the secret nobody knew. What deep-seated resentment, what dark motive, drove a brother to such an unspeakable act? The why not? How could a man live alongside his brother, silently despised for decades? The unearthed birth certificate, hidden, offered a chilling answer. Arthur Finch was the byproduct of a forbidden affair, a family secret swept under the rug. Stanley, the legitimate son, inherited wealth, name, respect. Every shared smile, every feigned concern, every family handshake, perfectly crafted lies. Years later, a phone call would reveal. He played the grieving friend, offering solace to the family he'd torn apart. His alibis rehearsed, his poker face impenetrable. He perfected appearing normal, a master of psychological camouflage, burying rage beneath fabricated normalcy. When detectives finally closed in, the charade crumbled. The knock on his door was sharp. His initial composure chilling, a practiced indifference. "Arthur Finch, you're under arrest for the murder of Stanley Finch." The words hung heavy. He denied everything, voice steady, eyes unwavering. But the evidence was a physical force. Familial DNA, hidden letters, the faint print on the victim's watch. Each piece chipped away. The interview stretched. He clung to lies, fabricating new ones, twisting truths, deflecting blame. He described a false narrative about his whereabouts. And that's when investigators noticed something strange. The walls were closing. Detectives presented the crumpled birth certificate, irrefutable proof of his hidden identity, his lifelong secret. His eyes flickered. The mask broke. The silent fury of decades erupted.